Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Scott.
I'm Shatay, and we're the Hazes.
Welcome to the Love Haze podcast, where we believe that healing and wholeness are not just destinations.
That's right, y'all. We believe they're a journey. And here on the Love Haze, we talk about how to navigate through it.
So today, we're doing our first ever part 2. This is the second part of our conversation about avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
During that conversation, we delved a little bit into communication styles, and we felt like it was important to just have some time to take a closer look at that. Really want to talk about how communication is just a basis for maintaining relationships.
Yep.
So we're going to get into that thing today and talk about how things can get lost in translation.
That's right.
Welcome to our Black Love journey. Let's get right into it.
Let's go.
Yeah. So we were trying to close out our last episode, and it was obvious that Mrs. Hayes had more to say about communication styles. So I just want to give you some space to open that thing up, and let's do it together. Okay. So what are you thinking? Let's talk about communication.
Yeah, I felt like there was more to unpack there. And I know we were talking about avoidance in the last episode, but this about communication styles and how to be in relationship with folks and give grace to other people, I want to give some references, like how to jump this conversation off. We were watching the other night, the show. We watched the entirety of the series, or I guess it's a mini series called You Don't Know Me, right?
Mm-hmm. On Netflix.
And we were watching with our friends, and there was a clear difference between the expectations or what women would have done versus what the men would have done when there's this break in the relationship. This girl moved in with the dude, she ghosts him, like whole ass, leaves the house, don't tell him where she's going, not picking up the phone, and he's like trying to find her. And so anyways, that really sparked a long ass night of us just being like, why wouldn't y'all and y'all be like, it don't make sense. She for the streets now, is what y'all kept saying. But it was just very clear differences on what the men were thinking versus the women. And then in the course of that conversation, it was like, well, we brought up there's a book from John Gray, not John Gray, the pastor that we know from like Lakewood and Relentless, but this PhD John Gray, psychologist John Gray, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And the whole premise of that is communication and how we have different communication styles and different even motivating factors. And so oftentimes we come to the table with our different perspectives, and then it causes a whole bunch of confusion, right? Disagreements. And so I just thought it would be great for us to talk more about that. I know in our own relationship, we do a really good job of saying, even if it's joking, but I appreciate that we do it. You'll say something and I'll be like, well, what I heard was, you'll be like, I didn't sleep well last night. And I'll be like, well, what I heard was I snored the whole time and you'll never want to sleep in a bed with me. And you know what I mean? Like just completely told myself this other story. And I think that's the premise of this: men are from Mars, women are from Venus, in terms of what someone is saying and what the other person is receiving from that. But you're the whole ass mental health professional. So you have anything to offer in terms of, communication styles? Are the differences mainly between men and women, or is it just people and your background and what you've been through and your perspective on life? And
so that's really what I lean more to. I think it's about our background. I think it's about what we grew up with, what we heard. Just from a textbook standpoint, there are 4 different main recognized styles of communication. There is passive, passive aggressive, aggressive, and assertive. And so you really have to figure out what type of communication style you're dealing with when you're in relationship with someone. And there, especially in relationship, we have so many conversations about like the 5 love languages and knowing a person's love language and how important that is. Understanding your partner's love language and being able to love them in that way, having them understand yours and kind of receiving in that way. And I think that, knowing a person's communication style is just as important when you are dealing with that person. So I lean less towards like, and men are from Mars and women are from Venus, because I just believe that I want us all to take our humanity back. and be humans first.
Okay, so then you just dropped four. I told y'all we need a whole ass glossary in dealing with Skyhead. So I need you to define, like, what. Give us an example of what each of those looks like. You said aggressive. Wait, passive, passive aggressive, aggressive, and assertive. Can you
Mhm.
like what does it look like?
I'll try to line them up succinctly as
Yeah.
best as I can. So passive is more of the people who really you have this idea of just kind of shrinking and yielding to what other people have to say.
Okay.
They are in relationship, at work or wherever. We have those people who are more passive at our jobs who really don't say anything.
Mhm.
Who really just whatever the direction is, they'll go with it.
Mhm.
You have those folks, and that's passive. You have those folks who are aggressive, who are loud, they talk over people, they give the direction, they tell you what they want you to do and all that kind of thing, and what they don't understand and all this kind of stuff. It feels like why are you yelling at me? Passive aggressive people like really don't say a lot, but they'll be feeling a kind of way, and they'll send like those snarky kind of emails that
Without
really
saying it
without
directly.
saying it directly.
That's so annoying.
And but they'll be in the meeting and won't say anything, won't be attending, like, oh yeah, I heard you, I understand the assignment, and then send some bullshit on the side.
Yeah.
That's more passive aggressive. And then those people who are assertive, that's really like based on the communication styles, the more ideal form of communication, where you're able to communicate what it is that you want the person to hear. It doesn't come across as like I'm overbearing. I also hear you. I am asserting though that this is the direction that we're going in, and nobody feels like unheard
Mhm.
in those communication styles.
Mhm.
So most people would like to be assertive, but for most of us, it's a journey to get there.
And that's basically what we were talking about in part one of this, the last conversation about
Hmm.
avoidance. Without naming it, we were saying it really is best, I think, or most fruitful to have an assertive
Hmm.
approach to communicating with other people, because you go be passive
Hmm.
thinking you're keeping the peace, and really you're just storing up resentment and opportunities to sever the relationship. Um, yeah, how do you see these kind of showing up in life, communication styles? These, I mean, are you able to quickly spot, when someone's being one or the
Hmm.
other? And
Uh, a lot of times for me, just I think having the knowledge of like communication styles, I'm able to kind of weave that into the way that I practice and also the way that I live my regular life. And when we were talking about in our last conversation about being able to understand people in the way that they grew up,
yeah,
to take into account people's humanity and finding the way to have some grace for people, and but also to have like this empathy for folks as well. I think that's all a part of it, and is to me is much like knowing their love language
yeah,
and understanding that people not doing it necessarily on purpose. People have found something that works for them, based on their life experience,
hmm,
and they're showing up in that space the best that they can based on what they know, and I just need to know your communication style, but also I can know your communication style. And this is where like love languages and communication styles kind of split for me.
hmm,
um, I can know your love language and try to learn your love language and bend to that a little bit because you're
hmm,
my person. But knowing your communication style means that I try to meet you there, but also bring you to the middle to want you to and want us both to do better in order to stay in relationship. So that's a thing for us where we know each other's communication style, but I say, okay, I hear you. And what I heard, what we always do, what I heard was this thing because I know your communication style. And being like, okay, what do we need to do? What else needs to be said here to get us to the place where there is understanding?
yeah, yeah. I hear that.
Okay. So I guess what are your thoughts then on the communication styles now that you've heard them, and are there any differences for you?
What do you mean differences in what way?
Like even in our conversation last night, you and our friend were just like, "Men don't be doing this, and y'all don't be listening, and da 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 da." I, 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 I will put it out. The caveat for me is that I think it's easy to be like men don't and women don't and da 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 da. But
Mhm.
what are your thoughts? And I want your honesty. Not that you're right or wrong. I just want to know what you think. Do you think it's a man and woman thing?
No, I don't think it's a man and woman thing. There are some differences in men and women in terms of, and I think that's the whole premise of that book that I just mentioned. The
Hmm.
men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and there are some parts of the book where it's like men focus on their abilities and they want to be problem solvers, and women really focus on like partnership, relationship, and having a safe space to express their emotions and like how there's friction between those. So I think in some instances that could be the case, but not just because we're male and female. It's probably more because of the societal norms of how we raise
Hmm.
little girls and little boys, and then we grow up to have these. But there are differences in our background. I think the thing that keeps us lost in translation is like when we don't call those things out. And so
Yeah.
there are certain expectations around how we show up, roles in the relationship or in the home based on how you grew up, the love languages, right? So things that
Hmm.
keep us lost in translation and misunderstanding. If I don't know that you actually prefer to be affirmed verbally, or that you prefer that some quality time, and if I'm over here like, well, I keep the house clean and I iron your clothes and like I do all of these things, but you're still feeling like there's a disconnect here. Those are the things that keep us lost in translation. I see that in my relationships with others. um those are the things that really show up more than gender, sex, for sure.
So for me, I think the things that keep us lost in translation are centered around like trying to explain away someone's behavior rather than um, having a conversation about it, rather than saying that I want to engage and figure it out.
Mm,
I think I get so sick of the gender wars on Facebook,
mm,
on social media, and different conversation on. And I think people right now, especially a lot of single black men, are catching hell, and single black women are catching hell because people are taking to their podcast to like spew their ideas about why men and women don't this and why men and women don't that. And one of the things that I hate most about that is it gives this idea that I'm giving you the key to why all men do this and why
mm-mm.
all women do
I
this,
don't like that.
rather than I think the one of the keys to like being our greatest selves is just like navigating the journey together,
Hmm.
like sitting down and having the conversation about why you feel the way that you feel and why I feel the way that I feel. And I think one of the reasons why we always give a disclaimer that we ain't nobody's relationship experts.
No.
We are just people who are fans of like having a conversation, like saying that whether it's this relationship or our friendships or our parents
Families, yep.
or whoever it is, I'm saying to the person, like, I choose you to be in relationship
Yep.
with, and I want to take the time to get to know you so that we can navigate together. I want to know what's important to you. I want to know your communication style. I want to know your love language, and I want to be able to figure out how we can remain in a healthy relationship.
Hmm.
And that's important rather than excusing it away. I don't want this life where we excuse away people's behavior and just like, oh, he's just a man. She's just a
Well,
woman.
yeah, we're men and women, just like we say black people aren't a monolith, men and women
Hmm.
aren't monoliths either. There
Exactly.
are people say this, the idea of having masculine and feminine energy, but there are women with more masculine energy. You
Hmm.
even say it to the point, the gentleman's point in the book, he's saying that men prefer to focus on their abilities and problem solve. But you tell me all the time, like, I'm not looking for you to solve anything. Like, I almost don't want to tell you
Exactly.
stuff because you're going to try to find a solution
Right.
to it. And so, in that case, like, there are nuances to people just based on how they're wired and what they experience. And we know that people come to the table, to any situation, with all of their past experiences, beliefs, teachings, all of that,
Hmm.
educational background, their culture, bring all of that to the table, and it informs how they show up. That's called something. I forgot what it's called. I learned it in grad school. Something about your like horizons, like the place where this experience meets like all of your past stuff.
Hmm.
I have to find that, but it's a thing. It's a,
Hmm.
and so it's more than just
Hmm.
man and woman.
It's that, and also even with the way that you show up in that way, and it's not just a man thing. It's definitely how you show up. But there have been points in our relationship where that was wonderful for me.
Mm.
Even getting this podcast off the ground. When I was telling you about this idea, you were like, "Okay, so what we doing next?" And you
Mhm.
started ordering stuff off Amazon, and then our lights were here, and then we had mics, and then we had headphones that we don't use. We had all of these things, and I appreciated that because in that moment, I needed someone who was solution focused in that way and who was willing to just be like, "Hey, we can do this." But that's not my everyday. And that is the journey to being in relationship with someone. Like relationships will ebb and flow, and there will be times when I need your solutions, but there will be times when I just need you to hear me,
Yeah.
like to be a sounding board. And to me, that's the beauty of being in relationship with someone who is willing to allow you to ebb and flow, and willing to say that, yeah, I needed this thing on last Wednesday, but today I don't need that. And you to be in a good enough standing in relationship and healthy enough relationship for you to be able to be that on last Wednesday and then be able to be this on this Wednesday because I told you what it is that I need.
Mhm.
And that is what it takes to be invested in relationship
Mm.
to me. So if you're invested, then that's what it is. And so I guess my next question is then what's the haze of translating different communication styles?
The haze, and I think this is the case for just relationship in general.
Hmm.
Communicating with people, being with whatever the case is, when it comes to two beings that are not the same,
Hmm.
it is having the self awareness. It's awareness of self. This is how I prefer to communicate, or this is how my needs are met. And the key to that book, the reason that it's been so successful is that it's given people the awareness to understand if we're having friction, it's not because we're on opposing sides. It's literally because we are understanding different things. We are
Hmm.
communicating different things. We have different motivations. We have different desires. And so the haze is like, if you don't have that awareness, you could really just be out here thinking, like, this other person ain't shit. They're not trying to
Hmm.
hear me. They're not trying to see me. And they're really just like, actually, this is just how I see the world. This is how I process my
Hmm.
life. This is how I show up. So if there is no understanding of yourself and understanding that everybody is not like you, it will likely keep you in confusion and miscommunications and that kind of thing, you know? If you
Yeah.
can't get here's another one. If you can't get away from the stories you tell yourself, if
Hmm.
you can't like see something for what it is, if you can't see a conversation through to get more understanding and you're just over here, I don't know, either being passive or being whatever and assigning meaning to somebody's behavior or speech
Right.
without knowing the full story,
Hmm.
that's going to keep you in
Hmm.
constant miscommunication. I don't know. What do you think?
Um, I think that it is garnering understanding from, and as much as we talk trash to each other, and you say things like, "Well, what I heard you say was this," I think that you're always honest
Mhm.
about what you heard, and there is this thing in my profession about being able to use your I statements and just being able to say, okay, what I heard was and what I understood was, and then giving me permission to be able to clarify. Like I understand that that's what you heard. What I meant for you to hear was this, and giving more information rather than shrinking back, being passive, and taking that information, holding it, and being like, this person don't care about me because they said X, Y, and Z, taking the time to
Yes.
get more information, get clarity. I have a coworker who always asks these questions, and she just be like, "Look, I need clarity,"
Mhm.
and I appreciate that about her because
Mhm.
it'd be some of us that will hear some stuff, and we'll have like a meeting after the meeting, and be like, "I can't believe that," and she'll be on the call and be like, "I just need clarity
Yeah.
because I don't understand this," and I really appreciate that about her. Just like I appreciate what you have to say when you say what I heard was because it makes me be able to do some reflection to and being a reflective listener is a very good quality because you're able to tell the person what it is that you heard and they have the opportunity to be like, no, that's not what I meant. So you have to be a master of doing reflective listening, and that can be a lot of the haze. um Also, um just experiential learning.
Mhm.
Experiential learning just means like I'm experiencing this relationship with you in your uniqueness and your humanity for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
At baseline, and you know this me, at baseline, I choose you. I want to do this with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to navigate this journey to figuring it out with you. That can be a haze. It can be difficult. We won't always be in agreement.
Yeah.
But I choose you, and let's navigate it together.
That requires some level of vulnerability too,
Mm-hmm.
which we already know is uncomfortable. The other thing, though, in terms of using those I statements, what you're doing, the benefit you said for you is like being able to have reflective listening. I'll say another benefit for the person saying it, and now I think we're getting kind of into the how do you navigate the haze.
Mm-hmm.
Another benefit is that I get to say the story I was telling myself out loud, and like that frees. You know how they say, like, if you have shame, if you just say it out loud, it frees you from that
Mm-hmm.
shame. It like frees, you just put it all on the table. So now it's not just a story I'm telling myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've said it out loud, and you get to combat that story, or you get to negate that story. So I'm basically saying the story I'm telling myself is like, I'm difficult. If we go back to this, you not sleeping well, me snoring, which I do snore. But I'm telling myself it's too hard for him to sleep with me. I'm not making it comfortable. And at some point he's gonna not want to sleep in the same room because I snore.
Not real.
So that's why me saying like, oh, what I heard is, I'm a difficult person to sleep with. And you get to say, I actually wasn't saying that at all. Sometimes you'll be like, I worked out too hard and I was sore and I couldn't get comfortable. Or I was thinking about how I had to get up early and do this thing for work and my mind wouldn't shut off. So I've made this whole scenario about me, right? 4 agreements, going back to that. Everything ain't about you. And you say that to me all the time. Like, everything ain't about you. But I get to say out loud, what I heard is this thing. And you're like, actually, that's not anybody checking for you in this situation.
Right. But, I'm always checking for you, and you do snore, and it's fine. I do sometimes as well.
Yes, you do.
But wait a minute. But it is like creating space to be able to have those conversations where you don't have to shrink back.
Yeah.
Like you can just assert that this is the thing. And so I think sometimes it's like almost having those surface level conversations sometimes when people ask you like, how are you? And they really don't want to know. We have to stop having surface level conversations and really be invested in whatever the answer is. That is the investment. That is the learning and the journey itself. Like I really do want to know. If I ask you something, I'm really invested in whatever that answer is and how we can better communicate through that ebb or that flow or whatever correction needs to be made in that moment. Like we gotta figure out what that looks like.
Are there any other ways to navigate this aside from calling it out in the moment, more self-awareness, anything that could help keep folks speaking the same language in some way?
I think just creating spaces where it's okay to say the thing or to even have misunderstanding.
Yeah.
I think that it all starts for me with just being honest and just saying that I may have misheard or I've being able to even tell people like I saw this through the lens of this other thing that happened to me. And I'm wondering if this is happening again or if I'm misreading you or something like that. Like take ownership of what it is that you're feeling in that moment. So much of what we do, I think we try to like prepare, right? Or we try to what is it called when you strike first when you think that you're under attack? We try to.
I was thinking anticipate, but that doesn't feel like the right word.
It's kind of like a preemptive strike.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
right there.
That's what it's called. We try to preemptively strike and say that and determine what it is that a person is thinking or what and prepare ourselves or brace for whatever it's going to be, rather than just coming like to this honest space. And that goes back to your idea and what you said earlier about like at baseline, we on the same team, right? So you ain't got to come here with your shoulder pads on. You ain't got to put your defense on. Like come here seeking understanding so that we can get on the same page and understand that you ain't got to be in attack mode. Like what I heard was, this. and just be honest about that thing. And I really think if we do more of that, and honestly, I don't have that perfected because there are days when I'm like, girl, you don't get on my face.
But to that point, what helps me a lot of the times, what helps me learn how to navigate through different situations is I learn by models. So
Hmm.
sometimes I either need to see it or I actively need to give you examples, or I need to have examples of words I can use to help
Hmm.
me. And then I can finesse those words to be true to myself. Some words that really help me navigate misunderstandings with other people were these, and maybe this will help somebody. I was operating with the understanding that X, Y, and Z was going to happen, but it sounds like you had a different understanding.
Hmm.
Can you
Hmm.
can we talk me through what you thought we were supposed to be doing, or what you thought we were supposed
Hmm.
to accomplish? When I learned to use those words in that way, that was so helpful for me because
Yeah,
it was like,
I get it.
okay, it really helped it be not about some shortcomings of the person itself. It really helped me be like, okay, we just saw have different perspectives of this thing or
Yeah.
this topic, and if we could just make it about that, how we had different understandings, then it frees you. Because something we didn't mention about the haze is that people tend to attack other people, especially when you're
Yeah.
in arguments. It really hurts my heart when they're in a disagreement and they immediately attack the person instead of like it's actually the miscommunication or the challenge that is the obstacle, not the person. Can you
Hmm.
imagine if you came to me and was like, and you were like, I didn't sleep well, and I immediately was like, well, you ain't easy to sleep with either, and you this, and I don't like the way you look when you
Right.
sleep, and like I immediately started personally attacking you.
Right.
Like, can you
Hmm.
imagine? Like, then all of a sudden there's resentment for this other thing. And you're like, also,
Hmm.
I wasn't even. It had nothing to do, like. And so
Right.
I think a lot of people get stuck in cycles because they immediately go on the defense, personally attack, when
Right.
really you got to step back and say, okay, what is it about the situation? How can we come to a mutual understanding, at
Hmm.
least, of the situation and how to move forward?
Right. And I think when we have those conversations, it's always rooted in like when there is good good soil here and
Mm-hmm.
we are trying to grow. It's always rooted in like I want to see how things can be better for you,
Mm-hmm.
and not how I can be on the defensive about my behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always want to be, and we talked about this last conversation, so we're bringing it over. It's about building and things being fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have that standpoint, I think that you're better able to have some of those conversations
Yeah.
and have a better understanding because, okay, we're building. We want this to be fruitful. We want to find our better. So I know that this is what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you gotta say it out loud. Like same team, man. Like I'm behind you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going for the same thing. We both want success. So ain't no fight here. Don't fight me. We fighting against this other thing.
This other thing.
Hmm.
And with that, what does it look like to be in, I don't know if it's agreement or alignment or healthy relationship? I don't know. I guess all of those can kind of be synonymous. What does it look like to be on the same team, but be individuals and like have
Hmm.
different perspectives and different love languages and different communication styles, but find a way to still be in one accord or make it work?
I think being people who normalize asking questions when you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Being people who normalize like getting clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Being people who normalize like setting the tone for conversation, for relationship, for all of those different things that we've kind of touched on in the past. But that's healthy to me. It's not unhealthy to have discord or have disagreement, right? And I think when you have this mindset that like if we're ever in disagreement, then that means that like we're getting ready to part
Yeah.
ways, you know. Having this idea that disagreement and healthy discourse are always good things and it's helping us get to where we actually want to be rather than having this idea of avoidance where I don't ever want to have difficult conversations, and if we
Yeah.
do, then it's bad. It's not bad. I think it's very much healthy to
Mm-hmm.
have those conversations and disagreements, and
Mm-hmm.
be able to talk our way through things that we don't agree on.
I think it comes down to acceptance.
Hmm.
Accepting who you are, accepting who the other person is, and allowing that person. And I don't want to say acceptance as if like you don't ever expect the other person to do better, be better. So not a like, well, this is all they're capable of. And so not a settling acceptance, but an acceptance of this is actually just how the person is, understanding acceptance, a non-judgmental acceptance of likely this is how this person is going to show up to the conversation. I now know, for example, it's going to take you a minute to process things. I think we had a amazing breakthrough that took us a couple of years to get to yesterday. And I was truly thankful for the moment when I was, in my dreamer mode and writing out ideas and excited about things we could produce and what we're going to next. And you were tired. And you were like, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. I think it was the day before. And you were like, I don't want you to think I didn't hear you, but I'm tired and I need a minute. And I was like, thank you for saying that. And we can just talk about this another day. Because a lot of times in the past, you just like, it takes you a minute to respond. And so I would interpret that as like ignoring me. Like, did you not hear what I just said to you 30 seconds ago?
You require a response. I promise you get on my nerves so bad.
And so
did you hear me? I know you heard me talking about we're going to do X, Y, and Z and we're going to have this platform and it's going to be for everybody black. And you ain't hear me say that? And I was like, shawty.
But it won't even be big things. It'll be a small thing like, how are you feeling? Like, what would you like to eat? And I have to accept, it takes you at least a good 30 to 45 seconds, sometimes longer, to craft a response in your head. And I have to understand that is just you processing. Versus me, I would actually kind of like, well, I don't know. Let me think about it. That's what I would say immediately. So you know that I heard you. Sometimes I think you call it attending. You say, I attend well. But anyways, I digress. The point is, you really just said, you know what? I ain't got it right now, but I did hear you. And that was like, that just moved my heart so much. I was like, we grew up, y'all.
Yeah. So does that mean you're going to let me alone when I come home at the end of the day?
I don't know.
Probably not.
But at least now I think we just came to an understanding like, okay, he needs time and that's okay. And she needs a response and that's okay. And so there's acceptance there. And now we are still on the same team. We ain't fall out. We ain't telling other stories. It's just like, we create a space for each other to show up in the way that we just are. You know what I mean?
And we can both get our needs met in due time.
That was a beautiful growth moment for the Hayes of y'all.
Already.
Appreciate it.
We still together. So what does this moment feel like? What is your music for the moment for this conversation?
I mean, this 7th Streeter saying is a forever move for me from the first time I ever heard it back in 2017, I think, when this album dropped. I don't even know the name of the album, but I remember hearing it for the first time. And she said in this album, and I said it several times on this podcast, everybody's grown till it's time to have a conversation.
Amen.
That was like a through line or something. But she said it, I was like, yes, it's so real. Everybody want to be around here talking about I'm grown and, independent and all of this. And then it comes time to have a conversation and they can't find words to say things unless somebody reading and they doing all of this, right? Then they got all the words. But just having an honest conversation with another human being about how you feel or how they feel, people don't know how to do it. So anyways, I digress again. Got off my soapbox. There's this song called Translation, and the very first 20 seconds of the song, she's not even singing, but she was like, I could tell you feel the way you ain't saying something, but you saying something. Like you're not saying something and saying something. And she was like, everybody grown till it's time to have a conversation. And so the whole song is just her saying like, if you shut up, if I shut up, we could probably get to a place where we are understanding each other. But for me, the meaning of it is just this whole idea of communicating well with somebody else and like, just listen to me. I will listen to you. We'll find the words to understand how we're both feeling. But you can't get anywhere if you don't just say it. Just freaking say it, man. Use your words, grown people.
Oh, we almost made it through the whole episode without you saying that. We almost made it.
Yeah. And I would like to stress, like I said in part 1, for me, I'll be specific. This is my choice, my preference. It doesn't even have to be verbal. You don't have to pick up the phone. You can write it out. You can email it. You can mail me a letter. You can text it. But just find the words and say it. If the relationship is important to you, just please say it.
Yeah, because if we're in a relationship, then we can translate it together, even
Yeah.
if we don't understand each other.
Yeah.
No, we may be speaking the same English language, but we may not be speaking the same communication style
That's it.
and a commitment to translating. Again, I identify with that. So that's true.
Mhm.
Run that. All
Yeah.
right, I'm gonna let you have that.
Thank you, sir.
Give a little donation.
Any other thoughts on this? You feel like we
Nah,
done said it
man.
all. We done said all the words about it.
Nah, I think like I said when we were getting ready to talk about doing a part two. I think the unique thing about it, even having to bring this over to another conversation, and I think it'll still show up in other conversations, is a lot of this is about understanding that it's going to be something that's ongoing.
Yeah.
And that's what it signifies here for me, is that, we are making a commitment to continue trying to understand each other on an ongoing basis. And it's important that we do that. And what I needed yesterday won't be what I need today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the importance of being in relationship and being committed to our commitments to just try to understand each other better.
Being committed to our commitments. That's a word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, beautiful. If y'all are watching from YouTube, please rate and subscribe this video. Subscribe to the Love Hazes channel. You'll get notifications when we drop new episodes. If you are joining us from Spotify or Apple, Google Podcasts, any of our other streaming platforms, please give us a rating and a review so we can spread the word and grow these conversations, grow what we're doing to touch more of the community, help our folks.
Absolutely.
And with that, like we always say, life will always present you with a haze, fam. Like it's just life is gonna life.
Life.
We have everything that we need within us to navigate through it.
That's right. And we're gonna navigate the journey together.
Mm-hmm.
So join us this time, every time, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna be right here trying to figure it out together. All right. See y'all next time.
Holla.
Peace.